Good evening, everyone. As we begin to read off our panelists, if you wouldn't mind stepping up and taking a seat at one of the chairs as we call your name. Our first panelist is Dr. Doherty. In March of 2009, Dr. Doherty was appointed Superintendent of Schools for the Red Clay Consolidated School District of Wilmington, Delaware. Before accepting his current position as superintendent, Dr. Doherty served as Assistant Superintendent for Academics and Director of Red Clay Consolidated School and a principal of the H.B. DuPont Middle School. Dr. Doherty earned his Doctorate of Leadership in Education from Wilmington University in 2007, and he is currently the President of the Delaware Chief Schools Officers Association. Please give another warm welcome. Our second panelist, Mary Philippone. Mary Philippone is personal coordinator for the She is a coordinator for the Diocese of Wilmington Catholic School offices, responsible for the placement of teachers and administrators in the Catholic schools. Ms. Philippone is also overseer of teacher licensing and certification through the Department of Education and in the state of Delaware and Maryland. Please give a warm welcome. Our third panelist, Wendy Levitz. Ms. Levitz is currently the principal of the primary school of Newark Charter Schools. She started her career in education as a fifth grade teacher in the Brandywine School District. Years later, she moved into the role of assistant principal within the same school district. Ms. Levitz received her bachelor's degree in education from Westchester University. She also earned her master's degree in school counseling and her certification in administration from Wilmington University. Please give a warm welcome. Our fourth panelist, Ms. Barbara Snively. Ms. Snively is a principal of Holy Angel School and has been for the past 4 years. Ms. Snively has also taught elementary, middle school in the Passaic, Passaic, New Jersey, Hastings, New York, and Richmond, Virginia. She has her master's degree in elementary education from Long Island University. Ms. Snively grew up in New York and later moved to Richmond, Virginia. With her husband's job transfer, it brought them to Delaware in 1999. She also has 2 sons. One will graduate from Salesianum this month, and one is at Pace University in New York. Please give a warm welcome. And next, we're going to have Lauren Havens introduce the remaining panelists.
Okay, next we have Dr. Stanley Spore. Currently serves as principal of Howard High School of Technology. Prior to serving as principal, Dr. Spore was an assistant principal at Howard from 2007 until his move into principalship in January of 2012. During his time as principal, Howard has received several noteworthy awards and recognitions. A lifelong educator, Dr. Spore started his career as a social studies teacher at William Penn High School. After a few years, Dr. Spore moved to Hudson Votech in the Newcastle County Votech School District, where he served as social studies teacher and head wrestling coach. He's a native Delawarean and graduated from St. Mark's. He earned his bachelor's degree at Clarion University of Pennsylvania and master's and doctorate degrees at Wilmington University. Please welcome him. Next, Mr. Albert Volpe. He's been a middle school principal for 6 years and taught middle school math for 10 years. Prior to teaching middle school, he taught 3rd and 4th grade multi-age classes. For 1 year, he worked at the district office developing the math curriculum prior to becoming a principal. Please welcome Mr. Volpe. Finally, Aretha Jung. She is a manager of human resources for Cecil County Public Schools. Aretha possesses over 14 years of human resources experience. Her areas of expertise are teacher recruitment, No Child Left Behind compliance, and teacher certification. Prior to starting a career in human resources, Ms. Young taught high school for 2 years. Aretha holds a master's degree in human resources management from Wilmington University. Please welcome her.
Now, this is the fun part. So will the team disperse among our guests? What we're going to do tonight, you'll see members walking around with microphones. We're going to go to each table, and hopefully you'll have some questions for our distinguished panelists. This is your opportunity to ask the questions that you've always wanted to answer about how to get a teaching job, what to wear, recruiting, open positions, whatever questions you have. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and someone with a microphone will come to your area and let you speak.
Okay, we have the first one.
Hi, my name is Jill Marcilli. I'm a graduate student. I have about a year left in the program. Just wondering, when you have a candidate come in for an interview, just in general, what might stand out if you thought they were a really good candidate? Would it be their job experience? Would it be something about their personality, their teaching philosophy? What would be something that would stand out to you as a good candidate? Just in general.
I'll go ahead and start. I'm not shy. You know, I've had a chance to be a high school principal, middle school principal, and went through the ranks at the district office to be a superintendent. I've asked the same question to every person I've ever met for a job. First question is, why do you like kids? I've refused to hire anyone who didn't like children. That's the most important thing we do. Everyone I meet's qualified. Everyone, they've passed the practice. They've had experience, you know, one way or another. But I think if I'm interviewing you, I want to have the serious conversation. I really don't want to have the patent answers. I'm not going to ask you patent questions. So I think the best thing you can do in your interviews is to be honest. Let them see the person you really are, not the person you think they want to see, because during the course of your first year, the real person is going to come out. If they don't like you, that's okay. You're not the perfect fit. I'm not the perfect fit for every job. But the best advice I can give you when you're in that interview, when you're looking for the job and what you're trying to do, is you have to be honest. Let them see the person that they're going to hire. And if you're not excited about it, then they won't be excited about it. But I just think it's extremely important that they see a transparent person. Okay.
Hi, Jill. It's important to know what kind of interview you're going into. In some school districts, you have a sheet of questions in front of you, and they read you the question, you provide your answer, and then there's no additional feedback from that. Some other places choose to have a more conversational interview. So I think it's important for you to know what type of interview you're going into, because it may change, not that it's going to change your answers, because it shouldn't. Merv is exactly right in what he said, but it's important to know if are we talking and having a conversation and getting to know each other, or are you only going to answer the question and move on to the next one?
I would just add that when we're looking for teachers, one of the things that rises to the top are intangible things. And one of those intangibles is an ability to connect with students, grade point average, years of experience. Those are all more tangible things. But an ability to really work with students, a love of working with students is first and foremost. One of the things that we say quite a bit at our school is that you will receive quite a bit of on-the-job training. So we can enhance your teaching techniques. We can teach you certain things about teaching. We cannot teach you to love working with students. We can't teach you to have an ability to connect with students. And so to the extent that you have those intangibles and you're able to convey those in an interview format and allow the interviewer to see those things, for us, that rises to the top of what we're looking for in candidates.
And I'm just going to reiterate what Wendy said, that my interviews are more conversational. So if a student comes up and is completely nervous with me, I'd rather them say, I'm a nervous wreck, this is my first interview. So I can kind of calm them down a little bit to really kind of delve into who they are. The love of children, but your enthusiasm will show through within the first 5 minutes of the interview. I don't know about the rest of the panel, but I can generally tell in the first 10 minutes of an interview a good core about the person that I'm interviewing based on your enthusiasm for what you're talking about. And so that's that's why we have more of a conversational interview and not a, like you suggested. I have seen those as well. The scripted questions. Our application has questions on it. That to us is your opportunity to answer those questions. We don't need to ask you all those scripted questions when you come in. So.
The other thing that I'd like to add to that, when I have an applicant come in, I like them to come prepared with questions about the school as well. Ask questions about our curriculum, the school climate, about different protocols that we follow. I think that's important because that shows your interest, that you've done your homework as well. And I would have to agree with the other panelists, your passion will come through. Another question I'd like to ask is how you plan to motivate the student in front of you, the student who struggles. Of course, you know, it's wonderful when you have those students that follow the rules and get the A's, but there's always going to be that one or two students that will struggle. How will you provide inclusion in the classroom for that child? So those are the things that would stand out to me as an administrator when I interview.
A smile makes a big difference. We talked about the passion, the excitement for what you do, working with children really comes out, and you've heard that several times already, but it really does shine when we're interviewing. The other thing that does become noticeable and will help you is as you become nervous, all of you have put together portfolios. Not too many people use those portfolios as part of the interview process. One of the things that may help you is to have something in your hands which would be your portfolio. So when you're asking a question and you know that you've gone through that, you've done planning, you've done a unit where you have everything together to answer that question, open up your portfolio and hand that to us. It gives you an opportunity, one, to put something in your hands and talk about something that you are very familiar with. Bring it back to the question, because it's easy to get off track with that, but your passion does come out because that's something you've developed, and that helps you out.
Just want to give you a trick of the trade here. This is free. Okay. When you go to interview, you're nervous. And usually they'll say, would you like some water? Would you like, and they'll give you, they should anyway. If they don't, I would leave if they didn't give you. They're too cheap. Okay, but here's the deal. You'll get a, and I like the point, a great point about, you usually get a list of questions, and that's usually a standard procedure. But everybody is always in a hurry to answer the question. Well, you're going to hear the question, or you're going to read it, but you may not know the answer right off the bat. Take a drink of water. It gives you 10 seconds. Don't be in a hurry to give the answer. Give your chance, let the mind work a little bit. And you're showing patience, you're poised, you're not going to stumble over your words. And it's okay if you drink the whole bottle of water. Remember, they gave it to you. But take your time, and it's okay. So don't be in a hurry to answer the questions. Think about what's being said.
And also, definitely do your research about the school system, because the last question is probably always going to be, do you have any questions for me? So you want to just know a little bit about the school system that you're going into, so when they ask you questions, you can know a little bit about, like, for instance, I work in Cecil County, and a lot of people don't know a lot about Maryland schools. So our website, everything's on the website. Make sure you're prepared.
Another question, anyone?
Hello, I'm Brittany Monastra. Quick question, you talked about resumes and applications and showing your enthusiasm. I guess one of my biggest struggles is making sure I have the appropriate words that show that on my resume and my application, because if I don't get a chance to show you in person my enthusiasm for kids and my excitement for teaching, I want to show on paper. So are there key words that you guys look for in resumes and applications, or things that we should kind of keep in mind when we are writing emails to kind of represent that without you meeting us?
I guess I'll take that one. Well, I don't spend a lot of time looking at resumes. So your resume is going to really have to stand out. I might take 2 minutes, well, actually 30 seconds, I'm sorry. I'm looking at your resume, so make sure it stands out. I know the principals like to see things that you're student-centered. If you have a lot of I do this and I do this, tell about what you do for students. But the main thing I'm looking at when I look at your resume is, are you certified? And sometimes you get a resume and you don't know where their education or their certification is. It's not even, it's like a blurb. So, stand out that what your certification is, that you're highly qualified. And just the resume itself, I've seen some clever resumes. What I don't like on a resume is when somebody puts a picture on there, because that takes more time for us to go ahead and we have to take those pictures off. So I know it's nice. You can put your picture on your portfolio, but please don't put it on your resume. And please proofread your resume.
Thank you. First of all, if you go in on a website and just say, how do I write a resume, you'll get about 500,000 hits. There's different formats, but I think everybody, that's a great point, about a minute. If I get resumes to me, it's usually the finalist, but it's still, I want to know they're certified, what experience do they have, and it should be brief. And your point is you want the resume to be clean. You didn't misspell your own name. You didn't misspell, where you went to school. I'm giving you experiences here, people. And have people read it. And listen, be thick-skinned. It's okay to get criticism about your resume. A lot of people like a mission statement about the person, and they make it, 20 sentences long. What's one sentence that talks about you? That's you. And you have to think about it. But really, a resume at your level, when you're coming in, it's about 2 pages. For some of us older people, it's a little longer. But for a resume, and once you develop your resume, you will continue then to keep it and build on it. You never know when you're going to need it for something else you want to do in your life. But about 2 pages, and it's got to be clean. It's got to be easy to read. It's not 8 font. It's not 18 font. Keep it standard. But really just make sure it's clean and readable. You give someone the opportunity to read your resume and say, what do you know about me from my resume? That's really what you want. If you read my resume, what will you learn about me? And that's what you really want out of it.
I'm going to reiterate the crisp and clean resume, as well as most of you will be applying to more than one place. Please, please proofread your cover letters. I can't tell you the number of cover letters I get that are not for the Diocese of Wilmington. They think they sent me the right one, but they never changed a couple of the words in the cover letter, and I get that. You're sending a lot, you're just adding the name of the school or the school district in. Proofread, proofread, proofread. I'm also going to reiterate very little time is spent. I get so many resumes and applications in a week. Follow up, email me, call me, leave a voicemail, because the number of applicants I get per week, I don't know that they're all really interested in the Diocese of Wilmington, or if they're just interested in trying to find a job. So I'm one of 40 places that they're applying to. The follow-up shows me that you really are thinking a little bit more about us specifically. So clean, concise, and proofread, please.
If I need a second grade teacher, I can probably look at 50 resumes, and unfortunately, if you look around the room, each of you have the same qualifications and look exactly the same on a piece of paper. And I'm not going to give you an answer because I don't know the answer, but you have to think about what makes your cover letter and resume look a little different than the girlfriend you sat next to for the last 4 years who has the same exact qualifications as you. Probably worked at summer camp, probably was a camp director, probably did everything that you did. Why am I going to invite you into an interview before her? So you have to think about what your niche is to make your resume look a little bit different.
In your cover letter, ask for an interview. It shows that you're very excited about what you're doing and that you want to work in a particular school. Or, better yet, this has happened to me in the past, walk in with your resume. We get to see you, how you're dressed, your smile, your appearance, There's something about that physical appearance of you being there and the communication, your delivery. It's short and sweet, but it can make a big difference.
I don't have anything to add other than what the other panelists said. However, here's a quick data point for you. I participated in the University of Delaware job fair about a month ago, and at the job fair, we collected over 120 resumes. We had someone go back and kind of sort through those. Over 30% of them had some sort of clerical error on the resume. So it doesn't sound, I know none of you would have an error on your resume, and it's always that other person that has the error on their resume, but just know that it's real. I've been doing that particular job fair for 3 years now, and inevitably we come across a significant number with errors, and so almost automatically they get put into another pile.
I was also at that university project search, and I had a gentleman come up, a young man, who wanted to interview so badly, and he could not give me his resume because he said he realized that there was a mistake in it, and he was not giving it out. And I gave him a lot of credit. So I asked for his information, and I gave him my email so that once it was corrected, he could email it. But I gave him a lot of credit for picking up the mistake and saying, you know what, I'm not going to give it out because I know there's a mistake in it.
How you doing? Tori and Taylor. Just for job interviews, I know that you're saying lack of love for children can be an ultimate deal breaker, but what other things at an interview could be a deal breaker for you when you're hiring a teacher candidate?
One thing that I like to do is present a scenario of something that could happen in a school. We know that things happen as far as disciplinary problems, and I might ask a particular question. If you are having your students return from recess and there are two students that have been engaged in some kind of altercation, what would you do with that? How would you follow up? Where would you go to a guidance counselor? Would you sit and talk to the students, call the parents? These are very important things that you need to be aware of as well. The other thing is your familiarity with curriculum, instruction, and assessment. How familiar are you with Common Core? These are very important questions. And again, your certification background. If you are a second grade teacher, a middle school teacher, how familiar are you with Common Core and the the protocol in front of you? All of these things should be well researched, and you should come prepared, ready to answer questions on the spot.
I would say, first, make sure you're professional. I think that's extremely important, and that you're confident on your responses. That you're not talking to the floor. You want to engage if it's one or two or three people or how many are on the interview process, but that interaction that you have and your professionalism. The other thing is, I always tell people at the end, this was said earlier, at the end of the interview, you should have multiple questions for the person or the team interviewing you about what you're going to be doing, about the school, about some philosophies they have. And you can research a lot of it, but you really want them to know that you're interested. Are you going to have your own classroom? Are you going to, how many courses will you be teaching? Ask questions that it's not a startling effect to you when you get the job. It's okay to ask your interviewer questions.
Professional dress. I'm going to tell you that I have a number of candidates who come in and I am put off immediately because they're not professionally dressed. And that doesn't have to be a three-piece suit. It doesn't have to be, a skirt and a jacket. But there is a difference between I'm going to a party and I'm going in for an interview. So I would say I don't have a lot of deal breakers, but it's that initial look when you come in. It's setting the precedence. We have teachers that don't dress in suits to teach. They're on the floor with elementary, with younger children. So it's not like I'm saying you're not having to come over the top professionally dressed, but don't come like you're going to a picnic.
The lack of knowledge in the field for what you're going to be entering, it does become apparent. every system has different buzzwords. They're all similar, but different enough. And so knowing a little bit about the system in which you would be interviewing does make a difference. We call, in Cecil County, we talk about unit organizers and content enhancement strategies. And I know Red Clay, Christina do something very similar, but it's not called content enhancement strategy. Same exact routines, but different name. Negative responses do come out pretty quickly, believe it or not. And one of the things that I'll hear during an interview is an attempt to build yourself up, to build themselves up and say, well, my student teacher did this, and not to say I didn't like it, but in a different approach. And so when you're saying, well, my student teacher did this, I totally disagree with it, believe it or not, those comments come out pretty quickly, and then it speaks to your character and who you are, as well as, we said professional dress, but there are little things that, bigger than little things, people who don't iron their shirts, and that speaks to work ethic. And so if you're coming in and you're dressed professional, it means you've put some thought into it, you have put a little bit more into who you are, and you're carrying yourself, so you do come across as professional. We're in a very interesting field. We have to relate well to the parents, and sometimes the professional dress separates us a little bit. At the same time, we don't get any slack from the parents. So you are expected to be a professional, but a real person. And so you have that very tough situation, but you have to do both. And being professional is what is expected of you.
There are a tremendous amount of elementary schools. You can go to Downs, you can go to Warner, you can go to Newark Charter, you can go to, I don't know, any of the schools, and you're going to find curriculum that looks similar. You're going to find teachers who are using smart boards and doing morning meeting on the rug and doing a lot of similar procedures and routines. And they're all great. But I think what's really important for you to figure out is fit. What school is a good fit for you? Is an urban population good for you? Do you need a suburban population? Are you willing to take a risk and try a difficult school that needs a really great teacher? But you need to be able to know that you're going to fit there and could work. And I think one of the panelists talked about that. I could never go to Votech. I have no skill or trade at all. That would not be a good fit for me. I'm Jewish. Catholic school doesn't work for me. I mean, so you have to know, you have to know your fit. And maybe it's Warner, maybe it's PS DuPont, maybe it's staying more at a Downs population, but it's good to know what you think you're comfortable with.
And make sure you understand the question before you answer it, because I went to upstate New York and interviewed a few people, and I asked the question, and I don't know what they answered. It wasn't what I asked. So just make sure you understand what you're saying, think about it, and then answer.
I have a two-part question. The first, does social media play a part in your hiring decision? And if so, to what degree does it affect the hiring process and or the current employment of a teacher?
That's a really good question, because throughout the country, districts are struggling with their social media policies. Even the Supreme Court's even had a ruling in the last 2 years. I really don't want to see you on Facebook. I personally have a problem with you telling everybody your business. And I have a problem when you decide to tell your students your business. We're seeing too many teachers lose their jobs because of being irresponsible. We are professional people. I am your teacher. I am not your best friend. I'm not your parent, even though I have to play those roles like a reality TV show. But I'm your teacher. And teachers need to understand that this profession requires professionalism and integrity. And when we lose that, we shouldn't be in the business. And so when we want to be out there and think we're doing a really cool thing, it's not, because you're tearing down the profession. And it's changed so much. Within a matter of seconds, everybody can know something about you that you never wanted them to know. And here's the problem. Once you Facebook it, tweet it, email it, it is there forever. And so we need to be careful about what we do with this because it is a dangerous tool. And I keep hearing teachers all the time, well, we needed to communicate. You know what? Education survived over 100 years in this country without it. And the bottom line is I can still get information out. But when we're putting personal information on our website, we get what we deserve.
We have a strict acceptable use policy for both our students and our employees. The best thing that I can say for you is it's hard to say not to be on Facebook. I have a Facebook, but I'm very cautious of what I put on there. I don't go out and put pictures of, my friends and I drinking on the weekend. You have to keep it very G-rated on Facebook. People can go in, employers can go in now and search and see. We have situations with our teachers where, it comes to an attention that did you see somebody posted on Facebook? So I don't think Facebook's going to go away, but I think you have to be very cautious of what you're posting, as well as Twitter, Instagram, anything else you're using. The other thing I'm going to say is if you have a unusual email address, create a Gmail account before you send out your resume. I get a lot of very unique email addresses, and I don't think they think before they send their resume. It made sense when they created it, and it's great with their friends, but it's really not what I want to see in the email address. So create a Gmail account with just your name, your initials, whatever, but don't, like you said, don't send pussycat, whatever.
Well, and see, you're learning from there's a lot of experience up here. And we could be a reality TV show, and you wouldn't believe it. But the problem is, this is all true. We cannot make up the things that we have to deal with on a daily basis that you would think are common sense. But for some reason, when you turn 22, common sense seems to leave some people. And it's really about common sense. When you email me, it's usually a 1 or 2 word response. And if you have to email me 3 or 4 times, we're having a personal conversation. Because everything I do is FOIA. Well, by the way, everything you write on your email can be FOIA if you're a teacher. So if you're asking me a serious question, I'm going to say, I'll talk to you, I'll stop by, thank you, good luck, whatever. I have the shortest emails that I send out because I know that anything I say can be throughout the country in a minute. So you have to be smart on what you're doing. I mean, there have been people that have talked about other teachers in emails, talked about parents in emails, talked about kids in emails. Confidential information that you will lose your job over. It won't be will you lose your job at the end of the year. You will lose your job that day. So we have to be smart about the social media that we're using. And just remember this. Your job is to teach the students in your classroom, not to be on CBS.
Yeah, I agree very strongly. I can't reiterate enough what the panelists have just said about communication. And let's face it, the social media is here and it's not going away, and we realize that, and there's a lot of pluses to it, but it has to be used in the right vein. When you're communicating, this is one thing that I say when you do get your jobs as teachers. When you have a job and you're communicating through email, be very careful, keep it generic. As the panelist said, you're not there to engage in a conversation. I will get back to you, and no matter what that parent or anyone says to you, thank you for your email, I will give you a call. Again, it's a safer place to go for you.
Hi, my name's Kirsten Campanella, middle school math major. Realistically, do you hire first-year teachers over someone that has some experience? And if we don't get a job right away, at the end of the summer, like say, well, I am graduating this Sunday, just so you know. if I don't get a job by the end of the summer, I mean, do you look for me like subbing, or do you look for me trying to do something else with education, or would you hire me?
You would be surprised how many teachers are hired because they were substitute teachers. If you can substitute teach, you can tackle Wall Street. I mean, and as big as our district is with 31 schools, I mean, it's amazing how much movement we have with pregnancies, with illnesses, with multiple things. But all of our principals know, they know who the really good substitute teachers are, because they'll say, well, I really want to hire that person if I get a chance, because they're really strong in classroom management. They know how to talk to and deal with the students, and they know their content. So I think you never be discouraged about it, but there's opportunities always when you're out there and you're still in the schools. The mistake I think a lot of people make, they don't get a job right away, they don't go back into the schools. And the key is you want to fine tune your craft. And if you're elementary, you're in a lot of elementary schools. You're out and around. You're letting people see you. You're marketing yourself now when you do that.
And I would just say that to your original question of, if you're a first-year teacher, would you get hired over someone with experience? Again, it goes back to fit. So there are certain, at the end of the day, what it comes down to is talent. So while experience is certainly important, if it's you against another experience, you as a first-year teacher against an experienced teacher, if your overriding talent is able to be conveyed, then certainly I know there are places that would hire you. So don't get discouraged just because you see a field that has experienced candidates in it, and here you are as a first-year teacher. Experience isn't everything. It certainly is important, but it's not everything. And so don't sell yourself short in an interview or in any other setting just because you lack that experience.
I had done I'm a principal in Cecil County, and I had interviewed 5 different times in Cecil County and did not get a job. And every time I called back and spoke to the principal, it came down to had someone in mind from substituting, which was very frustrating to hear. I had worked full-time to pay for school, so I started working and stayed in collections when I graduated because the money was much better than teaching. And then, granted, that was some time ago. And then I decided that's not where my heart is, and I started substituting. And I started out in Christina and taught at Brookside Elementary, and then had a few years there, and then ended up, as luck would have it, getting offered a position in Cecil County, and moved back to Cecil County. And then, obviously, now I'm a principal there, and the person who's, one of the people who's rejected me the first few times is now my assistant superintendent. And it is a little hard to see her sometimes, knowing full well that she didn't hire me. But she did hire me for principal. So it does come around, and don't be discouraged. As far as who stands out, like you were saying, the fit does make a difference. So when we're looking at people, as I'm looking at people who would fit well into our staff, I do really believe in having excitement for children. What kind of things can you do after school? What are the things that you're willing to do? I'm drawing a blank on the word. So that quickly. What strengths do you have that you'd be able to add to our school and strengthen our program? There's little things that happen. I had a group of teachers this year. A little girl comes in and started knitting. And a few of my teachers decided to start a knitting club just to help her out. And we have 10 kids staying after school to knit. And I thought, who in middle school would be knitting? But that was something that they saw the kids like and really took the interest. So those kind of things you can add in.
And I'm going to reiterate not to be discouraged, because I know with our schools many times it's the climate of the school. If we have a 2-track school and a principal is, might be looking for a 3rd grade teacher, their other 3rd grade teacher may have been there for 30 years. So they may be looking for a balance of someone coming in with some new ideas, some new, something that you just learned, versus that teacher to kind of balance out the climate of the school. So I wouldn't be discouraged. Again, I think it's really who's the right fit for the position and not necessarily the years of experience.
And if you don't get a job right away, every teacher that starts out the school year is not going to finish the school year. So we might have mid-year hires. So if you don't get a job that first week of school, there's still opportunities. And also with substituting can make you or break you. So if you don't take it seriously and you're not ready for it, don't come into the school. Because if you substitute, you do a bad job, you're not getting hired.
You should also know what opportunities are available through substituting. You can go to Kelly Services, and it's a monopoly of a substitute service, but you have to be on your email every night, and you have to check, and you have to decide on your schools. And I'm under the belief that maybe you don't want to spread yourself thin and try so many different schools. Maybe you want to put your eggs in a couple of baskets and become more well-known in a few buildings. Get your name out there, prove commitment, prove that you can do a nice job, and then you'll become a requested substitute within a building or two. Other schools, like my school, I think maybe the Catholic schools, we call our substitutes directly. I'm the person who calls substitutes. I might have a teacher calling out tonight for tomorrow. So you have to know how the substitute pool works. And I'm the classic case as well. I started as a substitute. I became a teacher. I went back right to this university to get my degrees. So it does work. I was a substitute as a librarian for a full year before I got a job.
When you do substitute, stop in to see the principal, the assistant principal. It's okay. I don't think it's a inconvenience. Stop in, talk to us. It does help us to put a face to a person, and so more likely to remember when it does come time to interviewing. Or should a position open up mid-year, as was stated earlier, you never know what happens within a building. I know we've had 2 positions mid-year for my school, and that's not typical, but it does happen across the county. And Aretha Jung at the other end of the table can tell you that.
At least 4 of the teachers I have at our school subbed, and they were there at the right time, did an excellent job, and came on board. So definitely that experience does count, and it is noticed the timeliness of professionalism, of course, but your timeliness, your dedication to stay beyond. And I do have to say, many of our teachers at Holy Angels have come from this university, very well prepared, great portfolios and resumes. I'm very impressed.
I'm Gina Augustine, elementary education major. What do you recommend to include in your portfolio?
I'll be honest, I didn't really care that much about the portfolio. Sorry. I know it's a lot of work. I know it's a requirement. I do agree, though, it's good to have if you are going to be nervous at your interview and we ask you, okay, share a math lesson that showed differentiation. Maybe there is something in there that helps you get your thoughts together. But honestly, flipping through those pages and looking at your grades and the evaluations, that is not that important to me. You guys might feel differently. It's just not a priority to me.
Yeah, the portfolios, I agree, are not, I said earlier, to use them as a helpful tool. We don't have a lot of opportunity to go through them. What you would try to do is anticipate what questions you're going to be asked. One of the things that I'd like to say is, how are you going to use data to regroup students, or how are you going to use data to focus your instruction? So if you're using that data, how is it that you've organized it, and what model are you using to reorganize? And it be an interest, it could be interest surveys, it could be just straight item analysis of a pretest unit assessment. And so those type of tools, what would you use? When you are differentiating, how have you structured your lesson plans? And so, again, anticipating what the questions would be asked and having the documents to just reinforce what you're answering. And so I know what I'm looking for is what kind of data do you use to drive instruction, and then what kind of things can you do to help support or cross more than one, because I'm looking at middle school, cross more than one curriculum, or how do you infuse STEM into your everyday lessons? Those kind of questions.
And as far as from a human resources perspective, the portfolio is more for, I guess, the interview. please don't send it with your resume or your application. It used to be a big rage of sending CV portfolios. We're not going to look at those, honestly. So I'd say make sure you bring your portfolio with you to your interview, and that way you can reference lesson plans, or if they ask you a question, you can say, well, I've done this, but don't send it to Human Resources.
Please, thank you. This has been very valuable, and we appreciate that. Al DeMedia, I'm here at Wilmington University. You touched on a very, I think, important aspect here of the interview process, the questions that one asks, differentiating instruction, dealing with classroom management issues. What are some of the other more important items that you ask your potential candidates in the interview process?
One of the things that we look for in candidates are leadership experiences or leadership capabilities. Teacher leadership is something that's critically important in schools. Principals, assistant principals can't do it all. It's we're dependent upon teachers and teacher leaders. And so, in fact, Teach for America, which is an organization that supplies some teachers, did a study not too long ago looking at candidates who were successful in their program and what the elements were that they had. And two things rose to the top: perseverance and leadership traits. And those two things are, perseverance can be tough to measure, but leadership is something that's a little bit more tangible. And so one of the things that we always ask about is leadership, and we're looking for folks who have had previous experiences with leadership or who have leadership capabilities and aspirations to help drive the school forward.
Another thing I look for is the willingness of an applicant to lead a club or extracurricular activity. That really drives the school. It brings a lot of life beyond the classroom doors. As far as Math Olympiad, if you are a math major, you would certainly want to bring that to the forefront. Science Olympiad, the STEM program, speech contests. There's so many things that a school would like to offer for students. There's so many talents they have. Drama, the arts. Anything like that, and your willingness to support it would go a long way.
Technology. Right now, we expect that the college graduates are coming out knowing how to implement smartboard lessons and use an Elmo, things that I never used in my classroom. So integrating technology is so up and coming and becoming bigger and bigger, and kids are expecting just a lot of interactive lessons, and we are relying on our younger, more fresh teachers to help us with that.
One of the things that I try to root out is common sense. It's very helpful. I want to be able to see that people are making logical choices when you're talking about dealing with a parent or a tough situation. One of the questions that was mentioned earlier about if you have a difficult situation in class, how would you manage that? What I'm also looking for is how would you prevent those things from happening? So what kind of things do you have in place or should put in place or ideally put in place when you do have your classroom that you would be able to do to manage behaviors and prevent incidences from happening, either with an individual child or as a group? And then what kind of classroom environment would you create? What would you do to help create that environment? Even though you're talking middle school and you might have the kids anywhere from 45 to 90 minutes depending on the structure of the schedule, what have you put in place to build that sense of community within that classroom? Again, you're switching from subject to subject, but you still have an opportunity to build that during that time frame. And another thing that I would be looking for anyway is going back to instruction, not just knowing the buzzwords, but being able to articulate what it means, how to use it. And granted, you have had limited experiences in doing so, but being able to knowledgeably speak about it, so that we know that you fully understand what it is and how to accomplish it. The other thing that I try to get out of an interview is how likely is a person willing to learn, reflect, and get better. Humility to me is very important because it just shows that your desire to improve and help the kids learn so much more than what they have coming into you.
I was going to reiterate the technology piece. I often ask about technology because our schools are now infusing that into, each curriculum. But us specifically, we're also asking faith-based questions because along with academic excellence, we're also infusing faith into all of the core areas. So those are questions that would come up for us specifically.
Good evening. My name is Mark Lukashevitz. I'm graduated from Wilmington University, winter 2012. I'm a career changer. What type of skills do you look for in a career changer, and how it applies to teaching?
The same skills I would look for someone graduating with a degree. The issue is you would come with different experiences. You would come with you've changed careers. I've been involved with multiple programs, from the Alternative Roots program to Teach for America to other programs, where young men and women have been in the business world, decided they wanted to teach science, they wanted to teach technology. They've come back, and it's the same thing. How strong are you with your content? Classroom management, ability to relate to the children you're going to work with. Because one of the things that you'll come back from the business world, which is totally different than the classroom. So, when you hire veterans, it's the same thing. Young men and women who've been in the service, it's the same thing. The one thing that they have a hard time learning sometimes is it's not the military. But there's going to be really strong classroom discipline. But the issue is, wouldn't matter to me if you were coming for a second career. Do you have the same abilities as the people we're hiring? And I think that's extremely important. You have a greater knowledge background of what the world's really like, which I think can be very powerful.
I have a question. It's probably a three-parter. First of all, when you reach out to a candidate to come in for an interview, first of all, is it appropriate to ask how many people will be on the interview panel, if there's an interview panel? And if you do have interview panels, can you talk about that? And typically, how many rounds of interviews would you do? So if you were interested in someone, would it be 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, etc.?
I'll start with that one. First of all, it is appropriate to ask how many people are going to be on your interview. In Cecil County this year for elementary teachers, we're doing something a little bit different. We're doing pre-screening interviews. So anybody who has an application on file and has their application complete, they're going to get offered an interview. They're going to meet with 3 principals, and from that interview, they might go to a second interview with the building principal. But if you're a math or a tech ed teacher, you might get 1 panel interview, and after that interview, you might get offered the job. So it depends on what the area is and what our need is.
I think the panel can be important. And so as you come into the interview, when you're doing your introductions, listen carefully to who comprises the panel. Typically, in our situation, you'll have a combination of administrators and possibly fellow teachers. And so, getting to know who's there, listening, is a department chair there, is the direct supervisor there, who's on that panel is important, so that you can craft your answers accordingly, and so that you know kind of who's on there, and it can really help to make sure that you know who those people are.
That's a very good question that you asked. And I personally don't think it's important for an applicant to know whether there's 3 others vying for the job or 100. You're there for your interview, and that's what's important. And that focus would be on you. As far as the interview process itself, you just come and you bring your questions. And it would be probably, I'm in a Catholic school, a private school, probably 2 rounds for the school setting that I'm in. And then I would be able to make my decision.
Many times when we go to interview, we will have 3 or 4 schools joining in. If, for example, if I know if I have math position, a math vacancy, another school might have a math vacancy, and to save time and interview 10, 12 people, how many ever we've selected, and we'll have 2 or 3 schools around the table, sometimes 4 around the table, and then what we'll do at the end of the day is really deliberate to see who would be the best fit for each building. And so sometimes, as was stated earlier, there will be other schools around the table. It might be just one school making the phone call, and we try to tell when there's that there will be another school joining us, but sometimes the vacancies, especially during summer, aren't found out until late, and so as my colleagues will do, is call each other and say, hey, I have this opening, I heard you're doing interviews, can I join in? And it might be the day before you come in. So most of the time we do try to let you know, but sometimes it may not. So don't be surprised when you see other schools sitting there.
At the diocesan level, we may do screening interviews, but the initial first interview will lie with the principal. So it will vary from school to school. It will also vary on the number of people involved as well as the number of interviews. As the panel stated, especially those last-minute openings, you know, they may be scrambling for a teacher. You may meet with the principal for one interview, and he or she may decide, you know, based on what they've learned from you in that interview, that they're going to offer you a position. Other principals may go through, as Barb said, 1 or 2 rounds of interviewing. So for us, it really varies.
Okay, looks like we have time for probably one more quick question. Oh, we have 2 hands. Okay, maybe 2 more. Here we go.
Hi, my name's Erin McGinley. I was just wondering what you guys look for in an email when you're reaching out to, when an applicant's reaching out to you to either follow up on an application that they put in. I just never know what is too much to say and what's not enough.
I like a brief email because I get a lot of emails, so just get to the point. And I never mind anybody emailing me. If you have a question, you're not going to know if you don't ask, but keep it brief.
I think it is wrong to email your cover letter and resume. I don't know why I should have to print it out for you. I think it's important that it's a hard copy that comes, and you can do a follow-up email to make sure that you receive the hard copy. I don't know.
Hey, everybody's different.
Please don't write down everything I say, because it might not be right.
If you're in the area, if you live in Delaware, if you're emailing a principal that you've never been in their building, you've never, you know, you didn't substitute, you have no clue even where the school is, my response will be your information will be sent to the HR department. Please make sure you apply online. I think if you really want a job at a school, you should try to work in that school. You should try to student teach. You should try to get to know the people. But what you're doing is cold calling, and that really doesn't work. So, you know, you got to put the personal touch to it, in my opinion. And I loved to hire substitute teachers. You know, I thought it was great, and I can guarantee you right now, this time of year, there's a shortage of substitute teachers as we get close to the end of the year. And it's a great opportunity because now there's a face, oh, I got your resume, I remember that. And, oh, you did a good job. And the other teachers know when you do a good job. That's where you win. That's where you win the battle there.
And again, this may be different for us as the diocese versus some of the districts. When you're applying for a position, you're applying directly to the diocese, but I always encourage candidates, if there's a particular area you're looking for, I mean, the diocese encompasses the entire state of Delaware, the eastern shore of Maryland. So I know if somebody is applying from Dover, they don't really want to go to North Wilmington unless they're willing to move. So I do encourage them, in addition to applying to us, make those contacts if there are specific schools. Some of them graduated from a particular school and would love to go back there. Our principals love to hear from candidates who, you know, want to come back into the system. But again, I will reiterate with the emails, I would keep it brief and keep it professional, but I'm always open to someone following up on their application because that tells me that they're really interested in the position.
Sometimes principals have egos, And when you send, for example, send 6 principals the same email, and they're all the same, it's all this, you see all 6 in the header. It's just, I knew some of my colleagues will say, I just delete it, because you obviously aren't interested in just that one school. You're just sending out a blanket. So the thing is, you don't care. I'm not going to look at it. So be wary of that. Sometimes that does come across.
Blind carbon copy.
Yes.
Always blind carbon copy.
Okay, do we have one more? Did you have one more? Okay.
You know, throughout my 4 years here at Wilmington, I've heard how important special education is nowadays. And what I want to know is, how important is dual certification in special ed for a future teacher candidate that you're interviewing?
We didn't hire any. We did not hire elementary teachers last year who weren't dual cert. And we had enough people to hire. I mean, we finally hired over about 110 people. We hire. We're growing about 400 students, 300 to 400 students a year. We'll hire about another 100 this year, other teachers. But the elementary level, we were able to find, and the school does a great job. Wilmington does a great job. All of our teachers were dual cert.
That answer, I guess, for okay.
Well, most of our special ed teachers were dual certified in elementary, but we did hire a number of just elementary teachers in Cecil County. But the important thing in Cecil County is that you're coming from Delaware, and we have to make sure that you're highly qualified. So if you're applying for to Cecil County, you're going to want to make sure you're highly qualified for Maryland, because Delaware highly qualified and Maryland highly qualified is different. You have to have a content test and a pedagogy test in elementary if you want to get a job in elementary in Cecil County. Delaware just requires content. So please remember that. And if you have any questions about that, you can always email briefly.
And to go a little bit further, it's not just special education. Any additional certifications you can pick up makes you more marketable. I know we are making whole schedule changes at the middle school level in Cecil County. And as we're making those schedule changes, we are having the need to shift people from language arts to social science or social studies. And I have to go by what the certification is. So if you have those additional practice tests, that makes it so much more helpful when we're looking for vacancies once you're hired. Now, to get a job, again, having those additional certifications is very helpful because it depends on what positions we have. And if we've interviewed you for your math certification, and we know later on that we have an opening in science, we may not have hired you for math, but we know from the interview process that we really liked you, we can have you, again, called back for a science interview.
Okay, I think we're done. Can we give our panelists a round of applause?